If you were to do a Google search with 3 words, weight loss pill. Try it out. Enter weight loss pill. You will get just over 150 million results in less than 1 second. Millions of websites that make a promise of a better body just by taking a simple pill. And what is even more stunning is the fact that we buy into it. We buy them. Last year, just over $33 billion were spent on various weight loss products. Okay? And at the same time, the FDA reported that 39.6% of Americans were overweight. I think it's kind of crazy, isn't it? Think about it. The conclusion I think that we can come to with that is that our world is filled with miracle cures that never deliver what they promise. I think we can surmise that. And most of us, we are skeptical when something seems to be too good to be true. Must be too good to be true. And so with all of that in mind, that it must be too good to be true, this morning I'm going to offer you something. Okay? I'm going to offer you something that will improve your life. It will improve your life radically. It will make you happier. It will make you healthier. And it will give you a legacy lasting far beyond your lifetime. And why do I want to talk about that? Because I believe there's something common that we all have in this room, and that is that deep down, we all want the best version of life possible. I think we all we want that. We'll ask, what's it all about? Is this all there is? And then you hope you come to a point where Jeff shared in his witness. You realize probably 85% of life is there, and then you reach this point and you realize there is something more there. There's something to be grateful for, thankful for. For you see, we all were created in God's image with a desire to be fulfilled in that and to be able to live for something just beyond our own stories about what we are about. But there is a desire that I think we all have, that desire for significance, of something that is significant more than just our own stories and our own little corner of the world. And today I want to introduce and just begin a conversation about a pathway toward that life. That life that I think we've always wanted, that we always want. And the good news, are you ready for this? It's not a pill. It's not a pill. And I don't need your credit card to get it. That's good news. But what I'm talking about is in one word that I want us to unpack. And it's that whole understanding of that word, generosity. We're going to be unpacking that in these next 3 weeks. And as we get going, I wanted to pause it as we launch it to uplift what generosity is not. Right out of the gate, generosity is not just talking about money. Generosity really has to do with so much more than just money. Yeah, money's a part of the equation, a part of the options, a part of the opportunities. But a generous life is much broader. A generous life is about being generous in a variety of ways. And here's something I'd like to just throw out, how we can be generous as we think of generosity in this time of being stewards of God's blessing in our lives. We can be generous with what we look for in other people. Here's what I'm getting at. Every now and then I'll see someone that they have body piercings in weird places, and they've got tattoos in kind of interesting places, and they've got colored hair and spiked, and I went, well, what's going on with that? What's going on there? And I then realized some of the most remarkable people I've met were people that I thought, you look a little weird. But you're a marvelous person. You've got great insight. You've got great compassion. And how we look at others, and we can be generous in that, it opens a whole other world. I'd like to study the old barons, the old tycoons. I was reading not too long ago about Andrew Carnegie. Andrew Carnegie, at one time, he had 43 millionaires working for him. And retaining good employees in any organization, that's hard, but retaining good employees who become very wealthy, usually they want to leave, they want to retire early, they want to jump ship. But to keep them, that was a major accomplishment. So Carnegie was asked, how are you able to do this? How are you able to bring out the best in people, but also keep them around? Okay? And I like what he said. He said, his response was, well, we work with people exactly the same way we mine for gold. You have to move tons of dirt to find a little bit of gold. In people, we look for the gold and not the tons of dirt. I think that's marvelous. Then Carnegie went on to say, we know we will get what we look for. In the times that we live now, when we look at generosity at this church, I want us also think of being generous and how we look at others. Okay? It's powerful. So what do you look for in others? Okay? What do you look for in yourself? How do you see yourself? What do you look for in your faith? Amazing things can happen when we look for the gold. There might be a lot of dirt, but don't focus on the dirt. Focus on the gold. Generous awareness has a place in what we look for in others. There's another area that we can be generous, okay? I say be generous in our words. How we describe something, how we respond to a situation. And the book of Proverbs is just loaded with how we need to be generous in our words. It says in Proverbs 12, the words of the reckless pierce like swords, but the tongue of the wise brings healing. Has your tongue been a sword? Or have you allowed it to bring healing? Do you use your words to bring healing to the people around you? Do you build people up? Are you a good finder in your words? How we react to others, not just in body language, but what we say. So I want to encourage you in the spirit of generosity to be generous with what you say to others. Another thing, we can be generous with our money. That is critical. It's important because every time we give financially, it softens our heart. And we become, I believe, more like Jesus, who gave everything. It's that act of stewardship of who we are and whose we are. So we're generous with our money. But also, and here's another area of generosity maybe you've not considered, but I want to invite you to also consider that you might be generous with your influence. Now, here's what I mean by that. Most of us would not be where we are today if someone hadn't made a choice to take a risk on you, hadn't made the choice to be generous with their influence and batting for you and rooting for you. And we all, everyone in this room, has influence. You have networks. You have connections. Are you using those as a resource to honor God and bless others? I'm going to share a story with you. I was confirmed as a youngster, and like a lot of confirmed kids, I dropped out of church. My parents said, well, get you confirmed, then it's up to you. And I did. I was too busy doing other things. It wasn't until my sophomore year that I started going back to church. And it was around that time, shortly after, I had a sense that I guess God wanted me to be a pastor. But before that time, it was in the garage band era. And all I wanted to do was to be a rock star, to be a guitarist. And I never studied. And we all know there's a difference between learning and making a grade. You might know enough where you can psych the teacher out, where they'll pass you a little bit, but you really didn't learn anything. And my whole thing, I wanted to get next to the next guitarist who knew something I didn't, and that's how you learn. I wanted to learn everything they did. And that was my life, and I loved it. But then the sense of this vocational thing changed, and I'm a youngster, and I'm really active in my church and get real close to my pastor, and then I learned that to be a pastor meant I got to get educated. You mean I got to go to college to do this? Yeah. 4 years? Yeah. But in our tradition, and 3 more for graduate school, 7 years after college. I didn't have the grades. Some of my friends were applying to a fairly demanding little school, Methodist school, and they didn't want to accept me. They wouldn't even take a chance. My pastor was a pastor of significant influence. He pastored the largest church of that denomination. We were very close. They had a nice relationship with the school, I think financially, and he said, you better admit Lonnie. He has to have a chance. You have to let him in. If he hadn't done that, it wouldn't happen. I know that. He's passed away. His wife is still around, and her name is Iris, and we communicate all the time. It's just beautiful seeing that. But be generous with your influence. That's remarkable. You have it. You have it. And then another area, as we look at the whole idea of generosity, also we can be generous with time. Oh, I know it's the most valuable asset we have. It is. We don't want to waste it. You know, we have a kind of an unwritten rule here. Anytime there's a meeting, it can't last over an hour and a half because we say after an hour and a half, you're in the devil's time. Nothing constructive can happen after an hour and a half. Get to it. Sometimes the best thing we can do for another person is to take time to stop and help and listen. Sometimes we need to just stop and celebrate. Are you using your time in generous ways? Generosity of time. Isn't that marvelous? As we think of living the generous life of our time. And generosity is about taking your entire life, everything you have, everything you own. And as we follow Christ, it is using that to bless the people around us. And so you might say, okay, Lonnie, I understand. I can tweak the generosity quote a little more in my life, but give me some more ideas of how I can leave this Sunday morning and immediately start making a difference of being a steward of generosity. And it's very simple. 3 little steps, okay? You ready for it? First one is identify an opportunity. Have your antenna out. And then, when I talk about identifying an opportunity, then I want to bring in there what I think is, you've heard me say this before, the most positive prayer we could ever pray is, Lord, what would you have me do? See, you say, oh, I'm praying for you. Lord, I pray for this person. You go, no, Lord, what do you want me to do about this? I don't want to cop out by praying general. What am I to do? Lord, what would you have me do with this? And then you do it. Okay? Take action. Maybe you write a check. Maybe you make a phone call. Maybe you stop your busy life and give someone some time. And then, once you take action, enjoy the blessing and trust God to just bless that act of generosity. What a marvelous place to be, to live like that. Identify an opportunity. Lord, what would you have me do? Take the action, and then give it to God. Becoming intentional about identifying the opportunities around you and taking action on those opportunities. It essentially is realizing that awareness activates generosity. So be aware. Now, the first step of a generous life is become aware of what's around us. Now I got to put my Pastor Lonnie hat on and this church hat on about being aware of what's going on and how that, in the midst of the awareness, let me say, Lord, what am I to do? What would you have me do? And then you trust God to bless the act of generosity. I want to just share just a few items that just came to my mind. Some things that maybe you're not aware of that's in need of our church in the area of generosity. And it's not all money, okay? Some things to be aware of. I don't want to put Janie on the spot, but Janie Andre, God bless her. She's our treasurer. She does a marvelous job. She's done a marvelous job for you. I mean, spectacular job. And she's, if not volunteering full-time easily, it's half-time. I mean, it's remarkable. And Janie, God bless her, she says, I'm supposed to have an assistant treasurer. We have a position in our bylaws for an assistant treasurer, and we got the word out, but no one's come forward. And so I want to make you aware, if you're good with numbers, or you know someone who's looking for a volunteer position, who can do it well, to work with Janie, because we got to look at how we can keep being good stewards of that treasury position. So it's an opportunity to serve. So if you have some interest to learn more, please let us know. But you need to be aware of that. Because, Janie also, she's not just a bean counter. She's a Stephen minister. She's gone through training to be a listener. She's a part of the organization that's leading with the small groups of our church. She's active in all kinds of other areas, and while number crunching is fine, but you don't it's good when the numbers balance. That's the only blessing you're going to get, the balance. But when you're working with others and you see their life being changed for Christ, and I can see why she said, I'd rather do less number crunching and more. Okay, but maybe you could help. We need that, please. And here's another one I just wanted to mention, and it deals with money. Okay, it deals with money. We have a debt. And I think it is kind of a bit ironic. I had a little conversation with Carl just before we started worship. I said, Carl, you realize it was 20 years ago this Sunday, the second Sunday of November, that you were out there in the woods with a keyboard and we had the groundbreaking for this building. He goes, no, I didn't realize that. So 20 years ago, this building you're in, just this, was built. Handful of people. We acquired a debt for that. And it's good to be out of debt. One of our big deals is we want to get out of debt, okay? And what's a bit ironic, so we have this debt right around $1 million still, but yet we built that building for about just under $3 million, a little over $2.5 million, and paid cash. But I'd like for us to put the debt in perspective, if you will, okay? The $1 million debt, which we've been paying principal and interest for 20 years, it's $1 million. But our assets, we have 23 acres of prime wooded land. We have this building. We have that building. We have outbuildings. And there's a lot of houses just down the street that's worth more than $1 million. So while that can be frightening, at the same time I can say that's been a 20-year thing that, okay, we've had to live with that. God has continued to expand the ministry, but we're at the point now where we need to get rid of that. One of the biggest items in our budget is just debt service. So not this time as we have our annual stewardship campaign, but we're looking at mid-year into 2025, saying, okay, let's get our heads together because we realize if we can dissolve that debt, that would bring about an additional $100,000 that would take care of all the maintenance of this church every year. If we didn't have that, I just want you to be aware of it. You probably didn't know that. But while we say it's $1 million, put it in context of what it represents. This church has remarkable assets for its ongoing ministry. We don't want to throw away the opportunities of tomorrow. So I just want you to be aware of it. We also need help caring for the grounds and the gardens. We got remarkable volunteers who's working with that, and we want to keep working on them and sprucing them up, and those are ways to volunteer, to get involved. We're looking at expanding the responsibilities of the administrative assistant, and one of the ways that would really help us is just having office volunteers, persons who say, I can come into the building, I can work a few hours these days, and we want to reactivate that, but we need someone who can coordinate it. So maybe you think, hey, I got some time and I got some skills and I could work on a newsletter. And so maybe those are some ways, but I wanted you to be aware of the need, okay? I could go on and on about the list, but I'll stop because we've spent a good amount of time already. So I want to encourage you to be generous, step up to it. Every morning, would you do this as you wake up? Ask God to make you more generous. And when you ask God to make you more generous, I would invite you to pray a prayer something like this. Holy God, I want to experience the joy that comes from being generous. I ask that today an opportunity to be generous will come my way, that I will recognize it when it does, and that I will have the courage to jump in and give. Amen.